All right, the ethical issue that we looked at was the exploitation of college athletes. Simply put, exploitation is defined as the use of something, in our case, college athletes, for profit. And college athletes are obviously amateurs. An amateur is a person who engages in an art, science, study, or athletic activity as a pastime rather than as a profession for profit. The NCAA would define an amateur as basically an athlete who has never accepted money. Some of the very first athletes to realize that they may have been exploited were Michigan's famous Fab Five.
The Europe trip, it made us feel like pros. It didn't make us feel like college kids anymore. And it made us start paying attention more to the business aspect of the game. Like, we're in Europe playing against pro teams. The stands are full. Somebody's getting paid this summer, and it's not us.
Exacerbating the immense pressure was their belief that they were now cogs in a money-making machine. Baggy shorts, T-shirts, trading cards, virtually anything featuring the iconic Block M.
It's cute. I might have to give it a try.
As freshmen, they felt excited. As sophomores, they felt exploited.
I didn't feel like a college kid anymore. I felt like a professional athlete that wasn't getting paid. I remember we were in Chicago one time, and we went downtown to the Nike outlet, and we walked past a display. It said, Fab 5 Nikes. That's when you start realizing having your own shoe doesn't necessarily put money in your pocket.
Whatever Nike wanted to sell, they threw it on the Fab Five.
We started to protest, and one of our silent protests was wear plain blue shirts that didn't say Michigan, that didn't say Nike, that didn't say anything. That was our silent protest.
A year after the Wolverines won their only title in 1989, merchandise royalties totaled $1.6 million. Following the Fab Five's freshman season, that number would climb to a 2-year total of $10.5 million. It was amateur athletics, but business was booming for everyone except the Fab Five themselves.
Perception of our lifestyle, that we were living like rock stars. We weren't living that lifestyle. That just wasn't what it was. We were eating cereal some night, you know, cooking hot dogs. That was our lifestyle. We lived just like every college student.
I drove a green Dodge Shadow that my mother gave me, all right? That's why it kills me when they try to act like we was getting it so big.
The only perks that we really got were pooling our money together to go to Taco Bell. They recognized who we were and gave us more tacos.
According to the article, NCAA Division I Athletics, Amateurism and Exploitation, in Wertheimer's first argument, universities' educational practices are quickly called into question when college players make comments similar to the one made by the University of Connecticut's men's basketball player Kemba Walker. While being questioned, the junior basketball star said that The Rise, Fall, and Redemption of the Black Athlete was the first book he'd ever read. Often there are times when athletes are put into easier courses or courses whose professors are known to like student athletes, so athletes are able to achieve and receive higher grades. In these situations, the argument is that student athletes B are being exploited by schools A because A is profiting thousands, sometimes millions, from B's efforts while B is receiving nothing of lasting significance. An example of this would be a quality education. In response to this argument, the question is whether student athletes are forced into these positions. It should be determined if student athletes are required to attend educational institutions with weak or questionable academics. The best schools are not available to everyone. Some athletes are only recruited by schools with poor academic records. Although players are not forced to attend one of those schools, some are financially unable to attend college without the help of an athletic scholarship. A student athlete under such circumstances would be considered a victim of exploitation. As for an athlete who has his choice of the best schools and still selects the poor academic institution, it has been argued that although he was not forced into attending a particular school, a teenager should not be expected to choose a school based on whether or not that school will provide him the quality educational opportunities. In this situation, a case for exploitation could also be made.
To
To better understand the exploitation of athletes ethical issue that we are presenting, it is easier to understand if a teleological perspective is considered. As defined earlier in the semester, the teleological theory states, if the outcome benefits the greatest amount of people, then the action is morally good. To relate to the exploitation issue, the question to ask is, when athletes are exploited, does it benefit the most people? By definition, the people that benefit from exploiting athletes are the NCAA, the institutions, respective conferences, and the fans. Putting it into a teleological perspective, the NCAA believes it is morally right to use their athletes to benefit not only themselves, but also other members of their organization. They value the opportunity to generate as much revenue as possible for themselves and member institutions.
This graph shows NCAA revenue breakdown for the 2011-12 year. As you can see, the NCAA gets 92% of its revenue from championships and TV rights. Both of these avenues are where you can obviously see they are benefiting from student-athletes' abilities. This graph shows NCAA TV revenue from 1982 to 2011. It is again easy to see that revenue is only continuing to grow.
One article that we found by Pat Ford on ESPN is called "The Myth of the Exploited, Impoverished Athletes." It basically says that athletes get 4 years of schooling. They get quality education, and at a lot of places it can run to about $200,000. And a lot of those students, regular students, get out of college and they're just covered with debt, and it takes years to pay off. But scholarship athletes are completely exempt from that burden. They don't have to worry about paying off school because it's been paid for, or at least for most athletes. But what's never factored in is that what an athlete can do with 4 years of free schooling once he or she is done. The knowledge and the background to earn a living for a lifetime. And if they don't take advantage of that opportunity, then that's their fault. It's not the school's. Another issue that this article talks about is that paying football and men's basketball players would completely stiff the non-revenue athletes. If Title IX doesn't completely squash that notion, then campus politics or even a simple fairness would. And then there's the question of how universities would balance their books while committing to a significant payment structure for all these athletes. And a lot of schools are already in the red, and to put this on top of that, no schools would be in the black on their revenue.
Our recommendation for this exploitation issue is for practitioners who are attempting to tackle or are trying to better educate themselves on this difficult issue. It is important to look at it and understand the concepts from a teleological viewpoint.